Her ID card felt like a fossil, thin and brittle. The young guard smirked, dismissing her with a lazy wave. "Let's see what ancient history looks like," one joked, tapping it on the scanner. Then, the system screamed. Not an error. A lockdown. The high-altitude sun over Denver cast sharp, unforgiving lines across the landscape. It glinted off the glass and steel facade of the Federal Security and Record Center, a building that seemed surgically implanted into the foothills, all efficiency and cold concrete. It was a place designed to process data, not people, a fortress of bureaucracy where human stories were compressed into file numbers. Into this sterile environment, an old Ford Ranger pickup truck, its paint faded by decades of sun, found a space in the visitor's lot. The engine ticked into silence and a woman stepped out. Evelyn Reed was 60, but the number was irrelevant. It couldn't measure the discipline etched into her posture or the quiet authority in her gaze. A cascade of silver-white hair was pinned into a neat, tight bun at the nape of her neck. She wore a practical field jacket over a simple shirt, her feet clad in worn-in hiking boots that had tasted the dust of continents most people only saw on a map. She moved with a slight, rhythmic limp, not a sign of weakness, but a testament to a history she never spoke of. It gave her stride a deliberate, unhurried cadence as she crossed the asphalt. In one hand, she clutched a worn leather wallet. In the other, a manila envelope, crisp and sealed, bearing a simple, handwritten label, "Nightingale Eyes Only." The automatic doors hissed open, admitting her into a lobby bathed in the cool, blue-white light of recessed LEDs. The air was still, scented with industrial cleaner and ozone. Annoying, upbeat pop music, tinny and thin, leaked from a small radio at the reception desk, a stark contrast to the building's severe silence. 2 security guards flanked the ID checkpoint. They were young, radiating the kind of bored arrogance that comes from having a uniform but no real purpose. The first, Leo, leaned against the counter, a cocky smirk playing on his lips. His uniform was sharp, his haircut sharper, but his eyes were dull with complacency. His partner, Maya, was slouched in her chair, one boot propped against the wall, scrolling idly through her phone. She glanced up at Evelyn, her expression a mix of impatience and disdain. Evelyn approached the counter. The steady thump tap of her boots on the polished linoleum was the only sound she made. She placed the envelope on the counter without a word, then opened her wallet. With careful fingers, she slid out a thin plastic card and set it down. Leo picked it up, his smirk widening into a grin. "Whoa," he chuckled, holding it up. The card was flimsy, its lamination peeling at the edges. The photo was a faded, ghost-like image of a younger woman. "This thing belongs in a museum. You sure you didn't dig this out of a time capsule?" Maya finally looked away from her phone, leaning in. "Seriously? There isn't even a mag strip. What is that, a QR code from the Stone Age?" Evelyn's gaze remained steady, fixed not on them, but on the terminal in front of Leo. Her voice was low and calm, yet it cut through the pop music like a razor. "Scan it. You'll wish you hadn't." Leo laughed, a loud, barking sound. Maya rolled her eyes, a cynical smile touching her lips. "Is that a threat, Grandma? Or just some cryptic poetry?" "Let's just prove her wrong," Leo said, waving the card with a theatrical flourish. He tapped it against the scanner, expecting nothing. "Let's see what ancient history looks like." The scanner's red light blinked once. A generic, synthesized voice chirped from the terminal speaker, "Format not recognized. Please try again." Leo tossed the card back onto the counter with a triumphant smirk. "Told you. Belongs in a museum. Sorry, ma'am, you'll need a current federal ID to proceed." He then dismissively tapped the envelope. "And what's this? Project Nightingale? Sounds like a bedtime story." Evelyn Reed didn't react. Her expression didn't change. She simply pushed the card forward an inch with her index finger. "Scan it again," she commanded. Her tone wasn't pleading, it was an order delivered with the weight of absolute certainty. Leo hesitated, the slightest flicker of annoyance crossing his face. Maya goaded him on with a sigh. "Just do it, Leo. Let's get her out of here so we can go on our break." With an exaggerated shrug, Leo picked up the card and swiped it over the reader again, slower this time, as if explaining the concept to a child. The scanner did not chirp. It emitted a low, deep hum, a resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate through the floor itself. The screen, which had been displaying the facility's logo, went instantly black. The pop music from the radio abruptly cut out, replaced by a profound silence. In the center of the dark screen, a single silver pixel ignited. Then another, and another, forming a delicate, intricate shape. A silver nightingale began to construct itself, its wings furled. Then, with a slow, deliberate grace, the wings unfurled, spreading across the screen in a silent, luminous explosion of light. The image pulsed with a soft, steady rhythm, like a living heart. Beneath the emblem, stark white text burned onto the screen. Crimson code engaged. Identity confirmed, echo. What the hell? Maya whispered, her phone slipping from her grasp and clattering to the floor. Leo's coffee cup, frozen halfway to his lips, trembled in his hand. With a deafening clang, the terminal locked itself. The sound was not electronic, it was the heavy, final sound of a vault door slamming shut. A shrill, piercing alarm, a sound neither of them had ever heard outside of a drill, shrieked to life, echoing through the vast lobby. Emergency lights lining the ceiling began to flash a deep, urgent red, plunging the hall into a hellish twilight. Simultaneously, with a series of hydraulic hisses, reinforced steel blast doors slammed down over every entrance and hallway, sealing the lobby from the rest of the world. The building was holding its breath. Leo and Maya stared, paralyzed, at the woman before them. The faint red light caught the silver in her hair, making it look like a crown. She met their terrified gaze. "You scanned it," she said quietly. The building was locked down, alarms were screaming, but her voice was the calm at the center of the storm. The lobby had become a cavern of organized chaos. The few civilians present huddled near the walls, faces pale with fear. The receptionist had abandoned her desk, her chair knocked over in her haste. From a side corridor, an IT technician sprinted out, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond the blaring alarm. He pointed a trembling finger at the glowing screen on the security counter. "That emblem," he yelled over the din, his voice cracking. "I've seen it. In the deep archives, a file on the Kandahar ghost operation from 20 years ago. It was a ghost protocol. It's not supposed to be real." His words hung in the air, a new layer of dread settling over the room. Leo and Maya turned from the screen to Evelyn, their faces bloodless masks of disbelief. The joke was over. The reality was a nightmare they couldn't comprehend. Behind the reinforced glass of a nearby control booth, a veteran guard fumbled for a red handset, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "Command, this is Checkpoint Alpha," he stammered into the phone. "We have a Crimson Code trigger. I repeat, this is a live Crimson Code event. This is not a drill." The main hallway doors, the ones leading deeper into the facility, hissed open. Sergeant Declan Shaw emerged, moving with the focused intensity of a man who runs toward explosions, not away from them. He was in his late 40s, his jaw set like granite, his eyes sweeping the scene in a single, practiced glance before locking onto the checkpoint. "What in God's name is going on here?" he barked, his voice a gravelly anchor in the sea of noise. Leo, snapping to a semblance of attention, pointed a shaky finger at Evelyn. "Her. That ID card, it triggered something. The system locked, it started this Crimson Code thing. She told us to scan it," Maya added, her voice tight with panic. "We thought it was a fake." Sergeant Shaw turned his hardened gaze on Evelyn. He saw a 60-year-old woman in a worn jacket. His training took over. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the counter and place your hands where I can see them while we sort this out. Evelyn didn't move. She simply looked at him, her eyes holding his without a trace of fear or defiance. I've already been verified, Sergeant, she said, her voice impossibly calm. It's all of you who are catching up. The line dropped into the room with the force of a physical blow. Shaw froze, his training clashing with an instinct that screamed he was dangerously out of his depth. Just then, his earpiece crackled. A new voice, clipped, authoritative, and coming from a level of command far above his own, cut through the static. All personnel at Checkpoint Alpha, stand down. I repeat, stand down. The subject is to be extended courtesy protocol. Do not detain. Do not question. Provide all necessary assistance and await further instruction. Acknowledge. Shaw's eyes widened. Courtesy protocol. That was a designation reserved for cabinet-level officials, for the architects of the very system he served. It meant the person in question didn't just have clearance, they were the clearance. It meant they outranked everyone in the building, including the director. He slowly lowered his hand and stared at Evelyn Reed, no longer seeing a lost old woman, but a ghost who had just laid claim to his entire world. The blaring alarm ceased as abruptly as it had begun, replaced by the low, omnipresent hum of the facility's lockdown state. Two military police officers, their uniforms crisp and bearing the insignia of the Pentagon's internal command, emerged from the newly opened administrative wing. They moved with a silent, synchronized purpose that set them apart from the facility's security. They weren't here to contain a threat, they were an honor guard. They approached the checkpoint, their eyes fixed respectfully on Evelyn. They didn't touch her, didn't guide her. They simply flanked her, as if they had been assigned to escort a five-star general. Ma'am, the lead MP said, his voice a low murmur. We're here to escort you to command processing. Evelyn gave a single, almost imperceptible nod and moved with them. As they walked away, the trio passed Leo and Maya, who seemed to shrink against the counter, suddenly insignificant. The command they were heading to was on the second floor, a glass-walled nerve center now buzzing like a disturbed hive. Dozens of analysts and technicians moved with frantic precision, their faces illuminated by screens filled with cascading lines of code they couldn't decipher. They were trying to understand a system that had just been reawakened by a will far older than their own. Evelyn was led not into the chaos, but into a quiet, adjoining conference room, its walls made of smart glass. She sat at the head of a long, polished table, her hands folded, her posture serene. The silver Nightingale still pulsed on the monitor behind her, a silent, powerful sovereign in its new domain. The door to the main command center flew open with such force that it slammed against the wall. Colonel Caitlin Pendergast didn't walk in, she stormed in. She was a woman forged in pressure and command, silver oak leaves gleaming on her collar, her flight jacket worn with the ease of long familiarity. Who the hell triggered a crimson code and why wasn't I notified the second it happened, she demanded, her voice cutting through the frenetic energy of the room. No one answered. Her eyes scanned the controlled panic until they fell upon the glass-walled conference room. She saw the figure seated at the table. Colonel Pendergast stopped dead. The fury on her face dissolved, replaced by a complex storm of emotions, shock, disbelief, and then a dawning, profound respect. A flicker of recognition, a memory of dust and chaos from a forgotten war theater, passed through her eyes. She straightened her jacket and walked toward the room, her entire demeanor shifted. She entered, and the door hissed shut behind her, sealing them in silence. She stood before the table, studying the woman she hadn't seen in over a decade. Evelyn, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Evelyn Reed looked up, a faint, sad smile touching her lips for the first time. You still know how to make an entrance, Caitlin. And you, the colonel replied, her voice thick with emotion, still know how to start a war. Evelyn's gaze drifted to the unopened envelope still lying on the checkpoint counter downstairs, visible on a security feed. This wasn't a declaration of war, she said. It was a tactical warning. I needed to deliver a message, and I knew the front door was rusted shut with bureaucracy. So I found a key they forgot they'd given me. She slid a second, identical envelope across the table. This is for you. It's why I'm here. The reactivation of a Crimson Code protocol sent a seismic shockwave through the nation's intelligence apparatus. At NSA headquarters in Fort Meade, at a CIA listening post in Langley, and in a soundproof chamber deep beneath the Pentagon, dormant alerts flared to life on screens that hadn't seen the Nightingale emblem in a generation. Within the hour, a black, armored SUV with diplomatic plates had sliced through Denver traffic and pulled up to the FSR Center's barricaded entrance. Two men in severe, dark suits stepped out. They moved with the frictionless confidence of men whose authority was absolute. They were from the Department of Defense Inspector General's office, the cleaners, sent to contain, control, and bury situations exactly like this. They were met in the lobby by Colonel Pendergast, who stood with her arms crossed, a human bulwark against their intrusion. We're here to debrief the subject and take custody of all related materials, the lead investigator stated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Pendergast didn't flinch. First, she said, her voice like ice, she is not a subject. She is a decorated operative with a clearance that, as of an hour ago, supersedes yours. You will address her with respect. Second, you are not taking custody of anything. The moment that emblem lit up, this facility and everything in it fell under her jurisdiction, not yours. The investigator's jaw tightened. Are you obstructing a federal inquiry, Colonel? I'm reminding you of the rules of a game you didn't even know you were playing, Pendergast countered. You may view the intelligence she brought, in my presence. Nothing leaves this room. The standoff was broken by the sheer force of Pendergast's will. The two men were escorted to the conference room. When they saw Evelyn's calm, unwavering gaze, their professional arrogance seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cautious deference. Pendergast laid the contents of the second envelope on the table. As the investigators read the intelligence report, a detailed, terrifying account of an imminent internal threat that their own agencies had missed, their faces went from skeptical to ashen. They left minutes later, empty-handed and visibly shaken. Later, as the facility began a slow return to a new kind of normal, Sergeant Shaw found Evelyn standing before a memorial wall in a quiet atrium. The wall was etched with the names of agents lost in the line of duty. You knew him? Shaw asked quietly, gesturing to a name on the polished black granite, CWO Daniel Shaw. Evelyn reached out, her fingers gently tracing the engraved letters. Bagram, 2004. He called me the Ghost. I called him the only one who could make me laugh during a debrief. Declan Shaw's stern facade finally cracked. My uncle, he said, his voice thick with emotion. He said a woman on his team, an officer they called Echo, saved them all. He said she was a walking legend, a guardian angel who walked in the shadows. Evelyn turned from the wall. Your uncle was the hero, Sergeant. I was just the one who made sure he got to come home. The statement was simple, a fact delivered without ego, and in that moment, Declan Shaw finally understood the true nature of the power that had descended upon his facility that day. In the security locker room, hours after the lockdown had been lifted, Leo and Maya sat in silence, watching the looped security footage on a small monitor. They saw themselves laughing, saw their own smug, dismissive gestures. Then they watched the screen go black, watched the silver Nightingale bloom into existence, and saw the raw, unfiltered terror on their own faces. The bravado was gone, replaced by a profound and humbling awe. We weren't laughing at an old woman, Leo whispered, his voice barely audible. We were laughing at a loaded gun. We were mocking a monument. Maya just nodded, her eyes still glued to the screen. She knew, Maya said softly. The whole time, she knew exactly what would happen. She gave us a choice. A choice they had failed. It was a lesson neither of them would ever forget. Upstairs, Evelyn was preparing to leave. Colonel Pendergast walked with her toward the exit. "Are you ready for this, Evelyn?" the colonel asked. "This intelligence you brought, it's going to pull you back in. Are you ready to return to the fight?" Evelyn paused at the door, looking out at the setting sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. "I never left it, Caitlin," she replied. "The battlefield just changed." She gave her old friend a final nod and stepped out into the evening air. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her presence had already altered the landscape. In Washington, D.C., quiet resignations would begin the next day. A secret congressional committee would be formed. A hidden war had been brought into the light, not with a bang, but with the quiet, undeniable authority of a living legacy. Evelyn climbed into her old pickup truck and drove away, a solitary figure disappearing into the twilight, a knight who had finished one quest and was already preparing for the next. The system she had awakened, Project Nightingale, was no longer a myth. It was awake. And it was waiting for its commander's next move. Some heroes are never carved in stone or celebrated in parades. They live in the shadows, guardians of a peace we take for granted. They are the ones who answer the call when the official channels fail. What Evelyn did, was it a necessary warning to a complacent system, or a dangerous overreach of forgotten power? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And as we discuss, let's show our appreciation for the silent protectors who walk among us. Comment, respect, to honor these unsung guardians. If stories of hidden power and quiet strength move you, subscribe to our channel and share this with someone who needs to see it. The echoes of history are all around us, if we only know how to listen.